right, great. Pete, John, how you doing today?
Good morning.
Great.
Great to see you. Thanks for offering to pop into an AMA event. So Pete and John, you're going to be running this with the AMA events. I'm backing off. I'm happy to help facilitate with any questions that come in. But we originally worked together, Pete, with BizNexus, helping with ops and with consulting. Move Group, your company based in Southern California, works regularly with private equity-backed companies, with newly acquired companies, and your wheelhouse is really that first 100 days. That's why we've got you on this AMA. So I know we've had a lot of questions submitted in advance, and there are some questions that have come in real time here, which we can get to. But really, I'm going to back away and let you guys do your thing. This is your area of expertise, not mine. Please introduce yourselves, maybe tell us a little bit about Move Group and the context, and then maybe we can get right into the questions that have been submitted.
Yeah, great. So thanks, Adam, and always good to see you. So I'm Pete Ricci, and I have John Tangredi here with me. We're both partners in the Move Group. And Move Group, we really do three things. We partner with businesses post-acquisition in order to help them really become successful and grow, as Adam mentioned. We also have a proprietary leadership development program that a lot of times we'll leverage with companies or businesses that are newly acquired to invest in some of those employees that might need a little bit more leadership development. And then at times we can acquire and operate businesses ourselves. But really today we're here to focus on our best practices for what we do once a business is acquired and making sure that it's set up for success. So I'll give a little intro to myself and then I'll hand it over to John. So my background is pretty diverse. I started my career actually at West Point. I received my degree at West Point, and then I was in the U.S. Army for 5-6 years. I did 2 tours in Iraq as an officer, and then moved into business quickly after that. I worked for Google for 5 or 6 years in sales and operations. Really kind of the way I describe Google is seeing the way somebody does it right. The way a business does everything right is Google. And then I quickly transitioned to venture-backed startups. So I moved to a venture-backed tech startup where I was the COO, and then moved to the CEO role, ended up selling that asset, moved to a public company as the global GM for Altium, which is a printed circuit board software design company, ran teams all over the world, and then left that to go to consumer goods, where I was the head of retail sales for The Honest Company, which is Jessica Alba's baby and beauty company. And then I started my own company, my own skincare line called Mantle, and then moved from Mantle to this firm, Move Group, and where we have worked with a number of companies in everything from growing them to strategy to operations, as Adam mentioned. And that's currently, as I mentioned, what we do at Move Group. But my background, very diverse, lots of different roles. John and I came together because we wanted to help businesses, and we've been in numerous roles that have helped us really see quickly how we can make an impact. So passing it over to John, my partner, but we're excited to be here and chat with you all.
Thanks, Pete. So again, my name is John Tangredi. I'm also a partner here at the Move Group. And quick on my background, I started my career with a Fortune 100 company and worked through different management roles there. One of the things I learned about those large companies is that they have a lot of process that's already in place, and you're really just continuing those processes. After that, I made the shift to startups and started working with venture capital companies and private equity firms as a business operator, and did everything from startups that didn't even have a product yet to growth companies to managing distressed assets to taking over family operated businesses. So really diverse and lots of different industries, software industries, healthcare industries, manufacturing. And one of the things I think that I learned through that is that most businesses, regardless of size, regardless of sector, regardless of revenue, all struggle or have opportunities in the same areas. And that is typically strategy, people, and then tactical operations. And I think that's what we're going to talk about today as things that are very important to evaluate during that first 90, 100 days as you get into a new business and really trying to get that foundation set up for success.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and we're seeing some questions come in, and we're going to hit on some of these as we go. So really, so first quarter post acquisition, what do we focus on? John just mentioned it. People. How do we evaluate them? How do we retain the ones that we want? And then how do we develop leaders that we think we see potential in and we want to grow? And we also want to invest in to show them that, hey, yes, new teams here, new ownership, but we want to invest in you and we see a lot in you. So that's on the people side. I'll speak to that. On the strategy side, John's going to speak to, what's the strategic plan and focus. And then third, tactics, as John mentioned, but what is the business plan? What are your KPIs? And how are we driving the day-to-day? So speaking about people, you show up on day one and, what do you do? So in many ways, you want to start the evaluation in our mind really immediately, from every little interaction to specific one-on-ones with key personnel. And the things that we really look for is first and foremost is cultural fit. Making sure that you understand you've done your due diligence, but now you're on the ground, your day to day. So are these people a cultural fit for not only maybe what the culture currently is, and if you want to keep those aspects of it, but then what you want in the future for the culture. The second is skill set. And we've seen this where there's been, we would call them like sacred cows in the business that, maybe the previous ownership would never fire because they've been with the business for 20 years, but they actually don't have the skill set to do the job. And so you want to understand really quickly, hey, are these people right? And do they have the skills to manage? Do they have the skills to lead? Do they have the skills to run operations, to run finance? Whatever that particular department is, we want to make sure that they've got that skill set. And if they've got a cultural fit, and going back to kind of Jim Collins' Good to Great, if they're right for the bus and they're a cultural fit, but just in the wrong position, then let's evaluate that and let them know, hey, we want you here. We just think you might be better in a different role. And then I think the third one in this evaluation phase is understanding who's on board and who's not. And a lot of that is done in one-on-ones. And just we like to just kind of be upfront and blunt about, hey, we want you to be here. We think you're a cultural fit. You got the skill set, but do you want to be here? And we want to identify, who is on board and who's not. But that can be difficult because they might say they are because they don't want to lose their job. But maybe they're not. And so I think that's going to take some time to really figure that out. So some of it's going to come across really quickly with attitude, and you'll see, okay, they don't want to be here, and you need to move them out quickly. The second is retain. So identify, who are those key employees that you need to keep, even maybe if they you only want them to stick around for a short period of time, but you need them to stay because they know where all the bodies are, or they know where all the keys are and whatnot. But really, that is, I would say, first week is like, even if it's directional, being like, hey, these are the top 10 people that are our key employees that we need to keep, or top 5. And then within this retain bucket is really selling them the dream and the opportunity. So you've evaluated them, you've figured out that they're cultural fit, their skill set, they want to be here. But now it's, okay, how do you sell them on a dream for a better opportunity with your ownership and your vision? So we want to focus on the future. And then, you know, given my military background, don't like to negotiate with terrorists. You shouldn't do it with your company either. So don't negotiate with terrorists. If they're going to hold something hostage, they don't want to be there, and move them along as quickly as possible. And then the third piece, and this is something that we're able to do and we have capability to do, but it's developing leadership. And really, we kind of say it as you've got somebody who's really got the raw talent or is motivated or excited, investing in them in some kind of leadership development. It's not so that they can just follow a process and lead a team, but we say it's like, can they hit the curveball? And that's what this leadership development program, what our program does is allows that individual to hit that curveball when it's like, oh, this isn't following the process, but but they're essentially needing to think outside the box, motivate their team. And that's what we see leadership development as, is really giving them an opportunity, but also growing them. And that's how we evaluate people. I know there's a question here around evaluating new team to determine strengths, weaknesses, and alignment to your vision. Touched on some of that. I think one of the things that we like to do is a self-assessment. And I think, obviously you want to review if they do annual reviews or quarterly reviews, if that's there, you want to review that. But we would have them do a self-assessment and actually, hey, what do you think your strengths are? What do you think your weaknesses are? See what they identify as those strengths and areas of development. And then, and a lot of that is in one-on-ones and making sure, especially with those key employees, that you understand what they think their strengths and weaknesses are, and then try to hold them accountable to that. So that's really, when we think about people, it's the core of the business. So this is how we focus on those first 100 days: evaluate, retain, develop leadership.
Yeah, I want to go back and touch on one more thing on the retaining of key employees. I think one of the things that I've learned in almost every business is that everybody is replaceable. Mm. So you get into a lot of situations where you'll hear, and you talk about the sacred cow. Oh, so-and-so is the only person that knows how to do this, and there's just no way that the business would move forward without him, or that key knowledge. And I found that that's rarely the case. There's always a way to move the business forward and get that knowledge turned over to somebody else very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. So pretty key.
Yeah.
So, and we will hit the questions. If we don't hit it in our topics, we'll go back to that. But I want to talk a little bit about strategy. This is always a big one that comes up. So first of all, I always think about strategy in short term and long term. Short term is 3 to 12 months. Long term, 1 to 3 years max. We used to do 5-year, 10-year strategic planning. And I think what we've learned is that external influences are too frequent. The change of those are too frequent to try to plan out 3 to 5 years. So I like midterm, 1 to 3 years. But let's talk about short term a little bit. I always think the first thing in developing your short-term strategy is making sure that you are crystal clear on what the current realities of the business are. So a lot of times when acquirers get into a business, it's a little different than what they thought they bought. And so you have to identify that quickly. That sets your foundation or your starting place. And then the other is getting alignment. It's getting alignment from the key employees, the key executives in the team on the following. It's really who we are. So who are we as a business, what we do, why we do it, and who we do it for. And what that really defines is your values and your vision as a company, your products and your offerings, your goals and objectives, that North Star where you want to get to, the guardrails of the business, what you're not going to do, and then your KPIs. So that's key initially to get those done. And from that, you may want to set up 3 to 5 key goals for those first 3 to 12 months. And it's difficult to say what those are but I can give you an example. So one of the companies that I took over through an acquisition was a software company that managed expenses. So if you're a company and you have a lot of people that travel, you could use this software solution to track your expenses, book travel, and so forth. And one of the things that we found was that our key development partner was also being sold at the same time that we were making the acquisition of this company. And that was something that we hadn't known during due diligence, hadn't been brought up. And this was something that we thought could greatly affect the go-forward development of the software, because the acquirer of that software business was taking it in a completely different direction. So we had to make a shift, and it became key to our short-term strategy, something we didn't think we were going to have to do, which was make a determination on whether or not we were going to bring development in-house or we were going to look for another outsourced partner. So that's just one example of how that could shift on those three goals. But I think the key of the short-term strategy is to really create a solid foundation for the future growth of the company. So that may be keeping the wheels on the bus, or it may be you may have short-term revenue goals that you have to achieve for cash flow, but it really depends. And then midterm is really, I think, more about who do you want to be? What's the aspirational but attainable goals of the business? And those may take a little bit longer to develop. And I always think it's important to use as many facts as you can to support that versus assumptions or emotions of where the business is going to go. External factors play a big role into that. SWOT analysis is a great way to do a foundation on those midterm goals. And then I always say be ready to pivot, because external influences, the economy, the market, everything will shift. So you have to be ready to make those adjustments. So
one of the things too, I'll add to the short term, when you think about KPIs, and I saw this at Google, I think Google's did it really the best, was, at the highest level of Google, they would come up with, really what is the objective for the year, or what is the strategy for the year? And then each one of the goals underneath that. And I know this seems obvious, but I just haven't seen anybody execute it really well in my career other than Google. Every department, their KPI flows up to that main one to help achieve that goal, whatever it might be. Like John said, a revenue goal or a focus goal. Like at the time when I was at Google, it was, hey, we're going to focus on mobile. So I was in the advertising space. I was in AdWords, managing teams within AdWords. And so our goal was, all right, we got to move everybody to mobile. And we had a certain percentage that we had to hit to get ad revenue coming from the mobile side of the business. And so, but what we knew, hey, we're linked, and there's really nice benefits from a cultural perspective of that is everybody feels like they're participating in achieving a company goal. So really I call it just the nesting of KPIs, making sure that all of that is there. I know that there was a question here from Sean, how to approach vendors to renegotiate term. I don't know if that fits within strategy, but you might.
Yeah, so happy to talk about that and can give some examples. The first thing that I would say with vendor negotiations is be honest. So if you have cash flow issues and you need to talk to them about terms, be honest about that. I'll give you an example. So another company that I took over, which was a distressed asset purchase that we make from Silicon Valley Bank, actually. So this company that hosted software with a large data center, they hadn't paid them in 2 years. So when we went to that group that was hosting it, we said, hey, great news. We've taken over the business and we'd love to start doing business with you again. And they said, well, that's great, but you're going to have to clear up the past due balance. And so, of course, well, hey, we made an asset purchase. We didn't take on liabilities. Well, they didn't care. So we had a major issue on our hands where we were going to have to figure out whether we're going to move to another data center or negotiate with the vendor. And so we set up a meeting with them, with their key leadership, and we shared the future vision of the company with them. But we also shared the challenges. And in doing that, what we really built was trust, and we showed them that we were looking to be their partner for the long term. And through that, and it wasn't easy conversations, but we were able to negotiate for forgiveness of most of the past due debt. We worked on terms where we could pay down what the remainder was, what that was. And we actually wound up with better terms than they had previously negotiated on the last contract. So I think number one, honesty is really, really critical when you're negotiating with vendors. When it comes to if you have vendor relationships or contracts that you think you are either overpaying or over market, or they haven't been renegotiated in a long time, that's another great, I think, place to start with honesty. And I've had conversations with customers where I said, look, we can't pay you that, right? It's over market, or a business doesn't support that. We need help. We need you to partner with us to do this. And have always found that most vendors are willing to negotiate. And when they're not, you've always got to have something in your back pocket. So going and finding the competition and finding another vendor to source with, sometimes that actually yields great results as well. So.
Thanks, John. So and I see Roman's question there.
That's a great one. I think if we can, we'll wrap with that question.
Yeah,
that's
we'll talk about tactics.
Yeah.
And then, so just to kind of recap real quick, we talked about the first 100 days, obviously people, strategy, and then let's talk a little bit about tactics. So one of the things that I'll speak about communication quickly is I think, once you've acquired the business and you're on the ground, I think we'll have a all hands pretty quickly, just to say, even whether it's day one or day two, introduce yourself. And again, we go back to honesty and just say, hey, here's where we are. We're going to be observing. We're going to be trying to understand the business in more depth. Our goal is to make this business better than what it already is. Obviously, you want to wordsmith some of that to make sure you're not offending anybody, or but really, like, we are big on communication. So day one, day two, hey, all hands, here's who we are, here's what we may not know goals, strategy, all of those things, but communicate that so that they're not, the employees aren't nervous. Like, continue what you're doing. This is a great business already. Let's continue that. So I think communicate that you're going to be having one-on-ones because you want to get to know the team. You want to get to know key employees. You might have also one-on-ones with key employees that you've identified, but then small group sessions with some other employees, whether maybe it's on the warehouse. Hey, just want to take 20 minutes to talk people in the warehouse, or whatever it might be, or 20 minutes with the finance team, understanding, what is going on, problems they see. You're not going to be able to solve everything, but really getting as much information as possible, so that the next meeting might be sharing, hey, here's what we're thinking about strategy. Here's what we're thinking about for people, etc. So I think communication is such an important part, a key part of it, and letting them know, giving them even a lifeline. So one of the things that we've done is office hours. So allowing yourself to be available, 1 hour a day, 1 hour every other day, so that if somebody wants to come in and say, hey, this is a problem, you're available and you're open to it. I also understand some acquirers may not be their forte, communicating. So find somebody that can do that. Find somebody in your team that is open to that and may do more of that communication than you would. So that's really on the tactic side. I would say communication is really, really key of the expectations and really just where you are as a new owner.
Yeah, I would agree that presence is key. I've always had weekly open house meetings, call it all hands on deck, whatever, just to form and share as much information that I can. And I learned not to be afraid to not have answers.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you don't have all the answers, it lets people know that you're real and that this is going to be a team effort. Uh, uh, we've implemented in the past where people can anonymously write something and put it in a basket and ask the question. And sometimes hard questions come up, but when you're honest about the answers of hard questions, then you'll get people to come along with you. The reality is, whenever an acquisition takes place or an ownership change takes place, most employees, their focus is going to be, what does this mean to me? Do I have a job? Am I going to be able to put food on the table for my family? Is my compensation going to change? Is my role going to change? Is there going to be consolidation, right? Am I going to be out of a job? Those are the things that people worry about. And again, I believe honesty is the best way to respond to all those in communication. So
the other piece on tax is to communicate. I think in some ways we've seen, immediately you get sucked into the day-to-day and the fires and everything. And this kind of goes a little bit to Roman's question about, 3 or 4 mistakes. I think there's going to be some fires that you need to understand. One of the tactics that we use, and this is not mine, but it was Eisenhower's former President Eisenhower. He would have 2 things. He would say, is it urgent or is it important? And if it's urgent and important together, that's something that you need to pay attention to. And so that's a way to start really understanding, hey, is this something I need to deal with now because it's urgent and it's important? Or if it's urgent, is it something that, one of those key employees can handle and come back to you? But I think understanding, is it urgent? Is it important? Is it both? I can deal with that. If you're dealing with everything, you're never going to be able to get out of that day-to-day and focus on the strategy and focus on why you acquired the business to 5, 6, 10 exit. The last piece I would say, that we see is immediately coming in thinking all the answers. And what our real MO and thesis is we come in and we observe. That doesn't mean we're not active. That doesn't mean we're not present, but we're observing. We're not immediately going to a solution, but we're trying to understand the why behind what's going on. And so that first quarter can be, until you get some really clear-cut direction of where you want to take the business from a strategy perspective. It's observation and collecting as much information as possible from people, as we mentioned, from strategic direction, whether they have one or not, and then digging into how do we, is there constant fire drills and why is that happening? So I think it's the communication, observation, presence, obviously, as John mentioned, and then acting quickly and when you can, right, to nip things in the bud, address issues promptly and directly. We're obviously honesty. We don't like to hide things. We like to be very clear, very open, as best we can. So I think, John, if you want to.
Yeah, and we'll tackle some of these questions, but I think in summary, here's the things that I've learned in doing this for 20 years. A lot of times what you've bought or what you think you bought is not what you're going to get. So understanding that there is going to be some differences, some things that you thought were rock solid won't be. You're going to find some gems in there too, but be prepared for things to be a little bit different than what you thought, and flushing that out early is critical. Don't make any assumptions. Be present, share your vision. That is critical to building trust. Start with people. It's all about learning who your key team members are, key customers, key vendors. Get out there and communicate. The other is getting reliable data quickly. So systems play a key role. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a company and we look at key metrics, and in the room with leaders, you'll hear people saying, well, I don't think that's accurate, or that I have a different number. or I can't get that number to tie out, right? Those are things that can really, really impede you from making good business decisions. So accurate, critical data and key metrics is super important. So cleaning up systems, I always say sometimes it means blowing up systems and starting over, but doing that early is pretty key. Pete talked about nipping things in the bud. Don't let things fester. When you see a problem that is typically either going to be a challenge to culture or a challenge to moving the business forward, you've got to get to the bottom of it, figure it out, and get on that right away. And then stay the course. Hopefully, when you acquire a business, you have a plan, right? You purchase the business for a reason. Either you think you can grow it, merge it. There was something. So stick with that plan as much as possible. Another big mistake that I see companies make is they abandon the plan once they get in there, and they start letting the business manage them instead of them managing the business.
Yes, and that's like getting caught up in that day to day where you can't get yourself out of it. I worked with a business in New York, actually, that new CEO, came in, and about 6 months later, he realized he was doing exactly the same things that the predecessor was doing. Literally had 45 direct reports, was signing 300 checks a week, and realized, hey, I need some help here. And that is where, I came in and we came in and helped him get out of that, and helped him realize that you're just doing what your predecessor had done. And we needed to shake things up and really if you think about one of those mistakes, 3 to 4 biggest mistakes, one of them was he got caught up in the day-to-day, couldn't get out of it. And he looks back 6 months later and he's like, oh my God, I haven't changed the things that I wanted to change. Business was doing well, but wasn't able to bring that strategy that he wanted to bring. So that's one. I think the other mistake, as I mentioned, is not allowing that time for observation, immediately going in, thinking you know everything, thinking you know the solutions. And if you're acquiring a company, obviously, that you've been around the block on or know the industry and know that may be a different story where you know exactly what you want to do because you've been in it. But if it's one that, and every business still has a different culture, even if you're in that industry. And so just, giving that time to observe and to make sure you know why, because that can also have ripple effects on culture when you come in and you're like, well, no, this is the solution, this is the way we're doing it. And they may have been doing it for 15 years for a particular reason, but understanding that reason and then giving them a really good why on why it's changing, and how it's going to benefit them, because it all comes back to how is it going to benefit or detriment me as an individual.
Yeah, and I'll add a few things on the biggest mistakes that I've seen as well. Again, I think I mentioned this before, to Pete's comment on negotiating with terrorists, identifying who should not be on the team right away and moving them out is critical. I've seen companies or new groups come in and delay this, and it creates two challenges. One is those people typically are going to poison the water. So they will be your detractors. They're going to be behind the scenes talking about why this isn't going to work, right? And they try to build consensus behind your leadership or your strategy, which erodes confidence in other people. The other challenge is that when you allow those people to remain in the company, other team members look at that and they see that this person, either they're a non-performer or they're negative about the company. Other team members will be looking at how you handle that very quickly. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen, is allowing those people to remain in the business for too long. Another issue that I've seen, or mistakes that owners come in, is they don't have a clear strategy when they come into the business. So this gets into, there's a question that was posted about when should you start your post-acquisition plan? You should start it long before you purchase the business, It should be part of your thesis, and it should be part of your due diligence.
It's like a playbook.
It's a playbook,
Yeah.
so that you can put that plan into action right away. But I've seen ownership delay that, and then what happens is your plan erodes. So you've got to have a plan. You have to stick with it. The other mistake that I see is not bringing in and having discipline as a key component of your culture. So that's one of the biggest things that most businesses lack when they're not performing. They lack discipline in how they operate. And starting a culture or having a culture of discipline early on in the business, and that could be with accountability, it could be on staying focused on the strategy. All elements of discipline, I think, are key, and I've seen a lot of companies not do that. And the last one that I'll say is documenting process. So that's key. And a lot of times, some of the companies that I've gone into, and I've always asked team members, well, what do you do? How do you do it? Is it documented anywhere? And the answer that we frequently get back is, well, we don't have any process here. And the reality is everybody has process because they're following something. Whether or not what they're doing is in alignment with what they want to do or documented, or whether or not they have documentation is another story. So in order to scale a business, determine if you can get reliable, repeatable outcomes, right? I would say that's the key of any business is can you take your offering, can you produce the same outcomes with it all the time, whether it's a product or it's a service? Process is the way that you get there, and not starting that process early and documenting that is another mistake.
And you'll find, if you've done acquisitions already or are looking to, most processes are not documented, and you might even get pushback. I've had an example where that I've been asking them to document, they won't. They hope I forget about it. And the reason is, I found out later, was they think that they're going to be replaced. They think that if they document what they're doing, all of a sudden it's like, well then, and so the why behind the documentation in my mind, and the way that I would express it to them, especially if they're a high potential or even just a good employee, is it's so that I can bring somebody else in and I can move you up to give you more responsibility. Versus I'm not looking to replace you. It's just, we want to make sure that we've got things documented so that so that if something does happen to you, or if you get a better opportunity somewhere else, we can cover that, but also so that we can move you up in the organization. So I think there's a lot there. I know there was a question, can you reach out to us? Absolutely. We're available to help with talking about that 100-day plan, to helping you plan for that. Even if even if you haven't even acquired a business yet, we can talk to you about that. We can help you with that plan and that playbook, because it's something that you want to be, ready for. You don't want to just come in, acquire, and then figure it out. I think, like John said, you should have it before you acquire. So, that's what we've got. We Adam, I don't know if you have anything else or anything that's come up in questions, but
we've covered all the questions.
Yeah.
I'm popping back in here, guys. I've been listening. I think that was great. We got some really good clips in there, really good feedback to the questions that were asked. They're going to keep coming in. So there is a chat in the community, and we'll forward those on a rolling basis. Move Group is going to be doing this on a regular basis in the community. So I think you guys are on next month, right?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we're excited, and we'll keep bringing newness to this and more examples of what we see as we go. So
yeah, I think especially with the questions that have been coming in, and we'll keep an eye on what rolls in. But the people questions seem to be a really hot topic, right? Anything like that nugget that you put in about people kind of shying away from documenting their processes because they don't want to get fired. That's like that kind of thing is exactly what people are going to be following up on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Pete, John, thank you for your time. Thank you for contributing your time for the AMA and the community. You guys can DM Pete, you can DM John in the community. But real quick, website and best contact info outside of BizNexus.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can email me at pete@movegroup.co. That's moovgroup.co, or John at the same at movegroup.co. And then yeah, you can find our website at www.movegroup.co as well. But either way, we're would love to chat. We live, eat, breathe this whole thing, and would love to help where we can.
Awesome. And for anyone watching this live or after the fact, we do have an AMA questions chat in the community on that left bar in the community. So if you want to ask questions, John and Pete can answer these on an ongoing basis, or they'll just store it for the next AMA and address it then. But you can do this on an ongoing basis, ask your questions about those first 100 days, or really anything operational, tips, tactics. These guys are a wealth of knowledge, so you can reach out that way. Did I miss anything, guys?
All good.
I think that was great.
Thank you.
Thanks again for having us.
Thanks for your time, guys. We'll see you next month.
All right.